When King Kong released in 1933, it saved RKO Studios from imminent bankruptcy. With the film's assured success, RKO was already demanding a follow-up, but there were a couple of problems. The first was time. King Kong had taken nearly a year and a half to produce, but RKO didn't want to mark off that much of the calendar again. The second problem was money. Even though RKO would soon be in the black for the first time in years, it wasn't exactly flush with the kind of money the original King Kong had spent during its production. RKO also wasn't convinced that King Kong was a replicable formula, that if they did the same thing again, it would be any success at all. For these reasons, the studio felt it necessary to cut both the production schedule and the budget in half. And with the giant ape still stomping into theaters to delighted audiences, Kong's son was born. After the eighth wonder of the world fell from the Empire State Building, his ambitious captor, Carl Denham, has become a wanted man, sought after by the press, by process servers, and by everyone else who wants to know how he will repair the damage created by his gigantic primate. Tired of hiding away in his lonely apartment, Denham flees the country with Captain Englehorn, hoping to make a life for himself in the shipping trade. However, at one island, the very man who had given him the map to Kong's home tells him sweet tales of a hidden treasure there. Before long, Denham sets sail for adventure once more, only to once again find a giant ape in his path. Before we go any further, if you could please hit that like button, this channel might finally be redeemed for its past mistakes. If you really do like this video, be sure to subscribe as well. Thank you in advance. With that out of the way, let's get back to the subject at hand. The team behind King Kong barely had any time to celebrate their success before they began working on its sequel. Miriam C. Cooper and Ernest Schoedsack once again produced the film, with Schoedsack pegged as the full-time director. Ruth Rose was tasked with writing the story, though there is a persistent rumor, which has never been proven one way or another, that Son of Kong was built off the back of a remake of 1927's The Enchanted Island. Regardless, Rose knew that there was no way to recapture the magic of the original King Kong, especially not with such a reduced budget, so she decided to write something more character-driven and comedic, with less reliance on spectacle and awe. In her own words, if you can't make it bigger, make it funnier. Also returning was Robert Armstrong as Carl Denham, who in this film is trying to reconcile his guilt over the events of the first film while fleeing from lawsuits and an indictment in New York.
Oh, if I don't get out of this house, I'll bite somebody.
Reflecting back on the two Kong films later in his life, Armstrong would say he preferred his work in Son of Kong, specifically because his character was given more dimension and a dynamic arc, and honestly, I have to agree with him. Other returning cast members were Frank Riker as Captain Englehorn, Noble Johnson and Steve Clement in a brief scene as the Native Chief and Witch King, respectively, and Victor Wong as Charlie the Cook. As with Denham, I appreciate how Rose's story gives more life to Charlie, who overcomes the goofy stereotypes to become one of the most low-key, interesting characters in the film, a keen judge of character who remains loyal to Englehorn and Denham throughout the entire film.
Charlie, they throw you off too? No throw off. Get off. Me no like them men.
For the female lead, the young orphan who is named Hilda in the opening credits but Helene in the actual film, they brought in Helen Mack, a former child actress and Broadway ingenue who had previously appeared in The Struggle and While Paris Sleeps. After Son of Kong, she would become most well known for her role in His Girl Friday, and would reunite with Miriam Cooper for She, though she would have a very long and storied career in film, television, radio, and theater as an actress, a writer, a director, and even a producer. Mack plays a significantly different character than Fay Wray's gullible damsel in distress from King Kong, and once again I think Rose's script does a good job creating a more well-rounded and interesting character, not beholden to stereotype. Hilda/Helene is still young and naive, but far more assertive and strong-willed, never letting herself be treated like a child or a victim. She is mourning her recently deceased father, and looking to replace him with Denim, which does get a bit creepy in the end when they become romantically involved, but you get the sense that she had always been prepared for the eventuality, knowing that her father was never going to be long for this world. The only other major human character in the film is the villainous Nils Hellstrom, played by John Marston. Hellstrom is probably the script's weakest character, in terms of his being fairly one-dimensional, as a Weasley cur who manipulates Denim with promises of treasure.
Shut up!
Still, he's a fun character to dislike, and the scene where he is thrown overboard by the very same crew he'd whipped up to mutiny against Engelhorn and Denim is absolutely delicious. Under the working title of Jamboree, filming on Son of Kong began in late March of 1933, less than 3 weeks after its predecessor's New York premiere, and over 2 weeks before its wide release. Some exterior shots were done at the Santa Monica Pier and on Santa Catalina Island, but some corners were cut. For example, though Max Steiner did once again have a chance to score the film, he didn't have enough time to do the entire thing, and pieces of his score from the original King Kong were recycled throughout. They even reused the sounds of Fay Wray's screams from the original film as well. The most important returning crew member was Willis O'Brien, the lead technician in charge of the special effects. He utilized the same stop-motion effects techniques and compositing processes of the previous film. He even reused one of the original Kong armatures to create the titular Son of Kong, who was known throughout the production as Kiko, a short portmanteau of King Kong, but who is named Little Kong in the film and in its promotional materials. The Styracosaurus that was cut from King Kong was also reused to create this memorable sequence. Though there are far fewer effect shots in the sequel, they look a little more polished, with cleaner compositing and tighter animation, reflecting the incredible speed with which visual effects were evolving at the time. However, the biggest effects sequence, involving a whole host of dinosaurs stampeding around during the climax, was never filmed, cut for budgetary reasons. O'Brien wanted his name removed from the film and refused to talk about it afterwards, even to his future protege, Ray Harryhausen. Part of this was due to tension between himself and the producers, with Cooper and Schoedsack insisting on a more hands-on approach with the effects. O'Brien, who didn't like the script to begin with, left most of the actual work to his assistant, Buzz Gibson, occasionally failing to show up on set at all in protest of his treatment. He was also developing a reputation for not being a team player in Hollywood, as he refused the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences offer of a special Oscar for King Kong, arguing that every member of his team should receive one as well. However, the main reason he wanted to be removed from Son of Kong was an unthinkable personal tragedy in his life that happened in the middle of production, when his estranged wife killed their 2 young children and attempted to take her own life, as they were all suffering from tuberculosis and its ill effects. For Willis O'Brien, then, Son of Kong became inexorably tied to his immense grief, which is why he didn't even want to talk about it. In the end, O'Brien's name remained in the film's credits, and he and Cooper's professional relationship survived long enough for them to make several more films together, including Mighty Joe Young, which features many of the same people involved in both King Kong and Son of Kong. One can't expect that O'Brien ever fully recovered from his tragedy, but he did marry his second wife in late 1934, and the two would remain happily married until Willis's own death in 1962. As for Son of Kong, it released in December of 1933, to poor reviews and a modest domestic box office of $616,000 in theater rentals against its $269,000 budget. Reviewers felt that it didn't live up to the promise of its predecessor, calling it everything from a trite melodrama to a glorified B-picture. Audiences of the time were also a bit confused and put off by the shift in tone, and RKO decided in the film's wake to abandon any plans it had to turn Kong into a franchise. Indeed, Son of Kong is today considered by many a film that nearly destroyed its predecessor's legacy in the crib. It has its fans, but for the most part, it's not beloved by very many. However, personally speaking, I respect it for what it tries to do, and for being watchable at all considering the ridiculous studio constraints put upon it. No, I'm not a fan of the screwball comedy, but I appreciate the way the story delves deeper into the characters and tries to develop a cohesive theme about redemption that directly follows from the original film's ending. It's clearly rushed, as evidenced by its inexplicable climax and the lazy plot device of the treasure actually being real, but it's also deliberate in its intentions. If you go into it without the expectations of King Kong, it's actually pretty good, albeit not truly great. In other words, despite its reputation and its flaws, Son of Kong is still a treasure of its own, and it absolutely qualifies as a sci-fi classic. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. Do you have any thoughts about Son of Kong? If so, share them with me in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you are a fan of what I'm putting out, please check out my Patreon to get early access to videos, vote on future topics, and more. I've been working hard to put out more bonus content for my patrons lately, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. As always, you can also visit my website at emcgill.com to find written reviews of plenty more sci-fi classics in both film and literature. Until next time though, when we'll break into the wrong goddamn rec room, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anybody.
Did you ever catch a monkey?
Did I ever? Lady, you'd be surprised.